Professor Diaz here, and in the last video I showed you economic efficiency, consumer surplus, and producer surplus. In this video I want to actually show the same thing, but I want to show it graphically, right? I want to use the supply and demand curves that we've been talking about in the last couple of videos and demonstrate how these things can be produce consumer and producer surplus. Again, this is the backbone of market efficiency. This is why free markets are so efficient. Now remember, here we have the supply curve and the demand curve, and we've got our normal price and quantity. All this was covered in chapter 3 with supply and demand. We have an equilibrium price, which could be charted right here from where these two curves cross back here. So we'll call that P1, right? Now, this will be the market price. This will be the market price for whatever good or service we're selling and buying in this graph. Now, when we have this price, you have to remember that a demand curve is representative of all people's individual demands. It's a summation, it's the aggregation. And the supply curve is the sum of all the suppliers, right? So let's just look at the demand curve for a minute. If this is our demand curve, remember P1 right here is the price, but we had somebody represented by this curve right here that would have been willing to pay this price for the good. And we had a few people willing to pay this price for the good. Now, some people were only willing to pay this price for the good. Those people do not get the good or service, right? Because the market price is set here. And this is true. You can think of some things you buy, you would have bought more, you would have paid more for them, right? And remember, that's the whole idea of consumer surplus. Some things you buy, when you get it, you pick it up off the shelf, that's the absolute maximum price you would pay for that good or service, right? Conversely, on the supply line, we have suppliers that would have been willing to supply for as low as this price, right? And some that would have only supplied if it was at this price, so of course they're not supplying at all. Only buyers and suppliers that are on this side of this line are actually making transactions. Now, if you think that there's an actual buyer here, and he would have paid this price, but he only had to pay this price, then we could say the gap between the demand curve and the actual price, that would be consumer surplus, right? And so if you take the aggregate of all the people along this line and say the gap between the demand curve and this actual price is all consumer surplus, well, pretty soon you've got this whole thing filled in. You could say the area of this triangle actually represents consumer surplus. And that's exactly what we do, is we say the area of this triangle represents consumer surplus. And we would say the area of this triangle represents producer surplus. The area of all of the triangles together, which would effectively be this whole area, it's a bad triangle, this whole area would be considered total surplus. Now, just to put some traction to this, let's put some actual numbers here. Let's say that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, okay? So if we want to calculate the area of those triangles, we could calculate what the actual consumer and producer surplus is. So we know the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. We can figure out the base of, let's figure out consumer surplus first, which is basically from here to here, right? Let's go from here to here. That is the area, the base. And so that looks like it's about 5.5. We'll go with 5.5 approximation. So 5.5 times the height of the blue triangle there is from 6 to, we're going to go ahead and call that 11, which is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so 5.5 times 5 is, and that's divided by 2. 5.5 times 5 should be, well, let me just grab my calculator here. No need to guess and be wrong on video. 5.5 times 5 equals 27.5, and that's divided by 2. 27.5 divided by 2 equals 13.75. So this would be consumer surplus. Okay, we can do the same thing for the red triangle. We've already got the base, 5.5, because the base is the same distance here, right? Or here if you're looking at the bottom. And the height then is here to here. So 6 from 2 up to the 6. So that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 up. So 5.5 times 4 divided by 2 equals 5.5 times 4 divided by 2 equals 11. So that is producer surplus. This is how consumer surplus and producer surplus work themselves out in entire markets. In the last video, I showed one transaction of a car, and that's a good example of consumer and producer surplus. But if we're talking about this is the whole market for, say, tacos, then this is going to be a lot of transactions, and there's going to be consumer and producer surplus in each case. So I hope this video helps. As always, let me know if you have questions.